is now my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker, Roberta Kaplan. Roberta, Robbie, is one of the most accomplished lawyers of our generation and someone I'm proud to call a friend. I invited Robbie to speak today for a couple of reasons. One is personal. Robbie and I got to know each other when I was just a baby lawyer, fresh out of law school in my first job. We were both clerking for judges on the New York Court of Appeals, I for Judge Howard Levine, and Robbie for Chief Judge Judith Kaye. Even at such early stages in our careers, I came to know Robbie as a brilliant strategist and an advocate. We worked, some might say schemed, together on some really important cases where we, as mere law clerks, were able to change the trajectory of New York law for the better. It felt meaningful and appropriate to ask Robbie to be part of my final commencement. It's sort of a full circle moment for me. I also thought it a good idea to invite Robbie because so many of you came to law school intent on changing the world and using your law degree to make a difference. There's no better example of that kind of lawyer than Robbie Kaplan. The Washington Post has observed that Robbie is a brash and original strategist with neither a gift for patience nor silence, a crusader for underdogs who has won almost every legal accolade imaginable. I'll give you some career highlights in a moment, but I will acknowledge that some of you may have different political leanings for Robbie. Even so, I anticipate that you will appreciate her wisdom, passion, brilliance, and most of all, her legal skill. Among Robbie's many accomplishments is a big win at the US Supreme Court in one of the most important cases in the fight for LGBTQ rights. She represented, sure? She represented Edith Windsor in United States versus Windsor, a landmark decision that invalidated a section of the Defense of Marriage Act and required the federal government to recognize marriages of same-sex couples. Professor Lawrence Tribe of Harvard University School of Law observed at the time that he could not think of any Supreme Court decision in history that has ever created so rapid and broad a lower court groundswell in a single direction as Windsor. Robbie wrote a book about the case. I encourage you to read it. It's entitled Then Comes Marriage, United States versus Windsor and the Defeat of DOMA. It was chosen by the Los Angeles Times as one of the best 10 books of 2015. For decades, Robbie has been a successful commercial litigator. She was in big law for a long time. She's represented clients like Airbnb, Uber, Columbia University, and Fitch Ratings. Robbie represents these clients and others in their most high-stakes, complex legal challenges, delivering a track record of impressive results. In 2017, she founded Kaplan Hecker Fink as a new kind of law firm, a firm that blends high-stakes commercial and white-collar practice with a fundamental commitment to public interest cases centered on values of inclusion, equity, and justice. KHF takes on groundbreaking precedent-setting cases that not only advance the public interest, but have a significant impact beyond the courtroom. Most recently, many of you will have seen Robbie on TV and on the front page of virtually every newspaper in the country as she successfully represented E. Jean Carroll in her sexual abuse and defamation case against former President Trump. It's hard to think of a lawyer who's playing a more public and important role in matters of public interest than Robbie Kaplan. Robbie's impact and leadership have been widely recognized. She's won the New York State Bar Association's Gold Medal Award, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the New York Law Journal, which also named her Attorney of the Year. Robbie has been named Litigator of the Year by the American Lawyer and Most Innovative Lawyer of the Year by the Financial Times. To say that she is a force of nature with a law degree is an understatement. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Robbie Kaplan.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin today by telling you a story about something amazing that your dean, Alicia Willett, made happen more than 30 years ago. In 1995, as you heard Alicia say, both Alicia and I were clerking on the Court of Appeals. That year, the court heard a case called Matter of Jacob, involving the parental rights of gay men and lesbians. Under New York law back then, any person married to a biological parent could adopt their spouse's child as a step-parent. If you weren't married, however, you were out of luck. As a result, there was no way for gay and lesbian couples to create two-parent families in New York, since marriage equality back then was a distant, faraway pipe dream. While I was confident that my then boss, Chief Judge Judith Kaye, would vote for the lesbian mother's right to adopt, she had no idea, I'm talking about Judge Kaye right now, had no idea just how personal my interest in the case was. Neither did Alicia, who was then clerking, as you heard, for Judge Levine. I had told very, very few people at that time that I was a lesbian, and neither Judge Kaye nor Alicia was one of them. Oral arguments in Matter of Jacob took place in June. The next day, the judges voted, and the split was 4-3 against the lesbian mother. As Judge Kaye's law clerk, I somehow convinced her to hold the case over this summer, and my job was to help her write that dissent. During the period of holding the case over the summer, I knew we needed a fourth vote to win, but I didn't tell Judge Kaye at the time that that was really my goal. Alicia and I both believed that her boss, Judge Levine, wanted to vote our way, but he hadn't yet found the way to do so. So the two of us cooked up a scheme. We started working to find support for an obscure technical point about interpreting statutes to avoid constitutional questions, even if the constitutional issue had not been preserved in the case. We really worked like crazy people over the summer, reviewing old volumes of Court of Appeal cases going back to the 19th century. In August, Alicia finally called to say, "We're on board. Congratulations. Chief Judge Kaye is now writing the majority opinion." In other words, just so you get it, thanks to Alicia, we had the crucial fourth vote that we needed, and gay men and lesbians who were already serving as parents would now be able in New York State to become legal parents, giving their families desperately needed protections. To be clear, Alicia had zero reason to think that anyone would ever find out about what she had done. This story was known to very few people until I told it in my book in 2015 with Judge Kaye's, to be clear, Judge Kaye's explicit permission. And Alicia, already the mother of 2 kids, wasn't personally impacted by the outcome either way. But none of that stopped her. As a young lawyer in her 20s, when no one else was looking, Alicia stuck her neck out and worked to help change her boss's mind, not because she would benefit from it, but because it was the right thing to do. A couple of months ago, when I was recalling this story and putting these notes to paper, I asked Alicia if somehow she knew that I was gay at the time and that she had somehow figured it out. And her answer to me was no, but it didn't matter either way. This story about Alicia is exactly the lesson I want to try to convey to you guys today, if I can. Let me now tell another story, a very old story, that was told by a great Polish rabbi who lived between 1772 and 1810. Here's what he said. Once upon a time, a king told his prime minister, "As an astrologer, I see that whoever eats any of the wheat that grows this year will go mad, will go crazy. Let us think of some solution." The Prime Minister answered, "Let us have some of last year's wheat set aside for us, so that we will not have to eat the tainted grain." The king answered, "But if we do that, we alone will be sane in an insane world. Then it will be as though we're the ones who are insane and the others are sane. It isn't possible," the king said, "to set wheat aside for everyone either. So we will also have to eat the tainted wheat. But we shall make a mark on our foreheads, so that when we look at each other's foreheads, we will know that we are both insane." As soon-to-be graduates of Albany Law School, let me assure you, like the king and the prime minister in that story, we are all insane here. Me, you, Dean Willett, your professors, your future colleagues, we all have an invisible L word. No, not lesbians or lobbyists, but lawyers inscribed on our foreheads. It affects the way we view the world. It twists our sense of humor. It allows us to see how the Constitution, how statutes, how cases in common law and regulations shape the lives every single day of every single American. Yes, we're insane, but at least we know it. Today, after 3 very, very hard years of work, and I heard Alicia go through it with you all, you're now one of us. You can speak the secret language that lawyers use. So what are you going to do now with it? It would take astonishing chutzpah for me to tell you how to plot out the rest of your life. We all walk our own paths, and there's really only one thing about life that I know for sure. That's that nobody knows what life has in store for them. But while there is a lot that you cannot predict or control, there is plenty that you can. So I'd like to try to offer some advice today based on my own career and my own life, with a modest hope that it helps you along your path. My first piece of advice is based on the most literal reading of the story I just told you. In this crazy world, find people who also have that special mark on their forehead and stick close to them. Even a king needs a prime minister, and both of them need allies. This is something that is too often overlooked or forgotten in the legal profession. Too often, we glamorize the lawyer as a kind of lone ranger standing heroically before the court. But that image is totally and completely false. I couldn't have won the Edith Windsor case without my colleagues. I couldn't have won the E. Jean Carroll trial last week without an amazing team of lawyers by my side. In fact, during that trial, I shared the opening arguments and the rebuttal arguments with my 2 partners, Sean Crowley and Mike Ferrara, not only because they are amazing lawyers, but because it took a team to win that case, and I wanted the judge and the jury to see that. I wouldn't have been able to start my own law firm, KHF, or Kaplan Hecker Fink, without the sanity, wisdom, and friendship of my partners. In case it isn't already obvious to you, let me remind you that the greatest gift law school has given you is the other students sitting around you this morning. You will accomplish far more if you find other lawyers who share your values and work with them to make things happen. If you come to realize that you're working with people who don't share your values or who can't help you grow as a lawyer, then be honest with yourself. They aren't the right colleagues. Find mentors who believe in you. Who you choose to surround yourself with speaks volumes about who you are and who you will become. The same rabbi whose story I told a minute ago also observed that sometimes a group of people happily dancing together take hold of someone who is standing miserable and depressed on the outside. They pull that person into the dance circle despite himself, forcing him to rejoice with them. In your career, when you feel stuck on the sidelines, Friends and allies can help bring you back into the mix. Let yourself be the person who is pulled into the dance circle. And once you're there, especially if you've come from outside conventional circles of privilege, do the same for others. This brings me to my second piece of advice, and also from the same rabbi. If you believe that it is possible to break, believe that it is possible to repair. You have the distinction of graduating law school at one of the most unsettled moments in our nation's history. To borrow from the 1963 Ethel Merman and Spencer Tracy movie that my son loved to watch when he was a little kid, it is truly a mad, 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 mad world. The past several years have seen a terrifying increase in hate crimes and bigotry toward minorities of all kinds, not to mention direct threats to the survival of our democracy. Our elected officials struggle to address problems like soaring income inequality, access to affordable health care, especially in the wake of COVID, an epidemic of gun violence, and the imminent threat of climate change. Whatever your politics or party, and I really believe this, it doesn't matter, I think we can all agree that our society has become fragmented, dangerously polarized, and our politics have become profoundly divisive. The rule of law has taken a beating and has never looked more tenuous. But it is far too easy to simply give up and become cynical, to decide that nothing really matters and that there's nothing we can do to fix it. As lawyers, you have a duty to act. As Justice Kagan put it, citing Stan Lee's Spider-Man, in this world with great power, there must also come great responsibility. As lawyers, seek opportunities to make the world a better place. When you take on clients, whether it's a person, a company, a government actor, devote yourself to solving their problems ethically and effectively. The life of a lawyer is a life of responsibility. Don't be passive. You have agency now. Use it. So when you see a problem, don't just wait for a solution to magically present itself. Instead, ask yourself, if not me, who? If not now, when? Those are the questions that I asked myself after white supremacists attacked the city of Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017. And it's what led me and several brave colleagues to file a lawsuit under the Ku Klux Klan Act against the perpetrators of the organized violence there. And that's what led to a $26 million jury verdict in that case about a year and a half ago. This leads me to my third and final piece of advice. Like Dean Willett, like your professors, like your colleagues and friends, be brave. As lawyers, we are temperamentally cautious and risk-averse, trained to see the risks and dangers of any course of action and avoid them at all costs. Over these past 3 years, you have now seen how legal reasoning can unduly complicate what is plainly right there in front of you. Lawyers are taught to switch deftly between both sides of an argument, to see every angle, and to define the right outcome by a reference to a limited set of considerations. This is why we're not always the most popular people in the world. This is why it's sometimes said that lawyers have no values, that we are just hired guns. But that doesn't have to be true, and in my experience, it usually isn't. But when your principles don't align with your professional, financial, or political incentives, it's far too easy to over-rationalize core values into a hazy, meaningless blur. A law degree gives you the privilege and the right to take risks and recover from mistakes that others cannot. Resist the impulse to play it safe. Think consciously about what you are doing and why you are doing it. If you just go with the flow and let other people define you and what happens to you, then one day you're going to wake up and realize that the life that you're living isn't your own. Becoming a great lawyer requires that you be courageous, that you press boundaries wherever you are, and insist that things can always change for the better, especially now. If you have followed my first two pieces of advice, then you will know when the moment demands bravery, and you'll have the support that you need to act. Truth be told, it was scary to take on a marriage equality case to the Supreme Court and feel the fate of so many Americans resting on my shoulders. It was scary to sue the Nazis in Charlottesville. It was scary to start a new law firm. And it was even scarier to take on the case of E. Jean Carroll, scary the most for E. Jean Carroll herself. Your life will not be easy. There will be times when you want to throw up your hands, maybe too many times, in frustration or anger. Believe me, I've had my share of those feelings a lot of times. I know I sound like an old lady when I say this, but if you guys think that sexism is a big problem in the legal profession today, just imagine what it was like when I graduated law school in 1991. Not to mention the fact, as I've already alluded to, that I remained in the closet for both of my clerkships due to my own fear and my own homophobia. When you wake up tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, persist. As members of the bar, you will be entrusted with the responsibility to protect the constitutions of this great state of New York and the Constitution of the United States of America. The people who stand the most to lose from the battles raging around us today do not have the privilege of being here in this ceremony today. They need your help now more than ever. Rabbi Nachman, the rabbi I've been quoting, taught his followers that all the world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing to remember is not to fear at all. Those words are as true today as they were in the time of Rabbi Nachman, where he lived through pogroms and plagues. So like Edith Windsor or like E. Jean Carroll, be brave. Be yourself and be true to yourself. Even if you lose a case or two or three along the way, like I did, keep on walking across that narrow bridge with as little fear as possible. You are about to enter one of the noblest, really I mean this, the noblest of professions. Take on clients and causes because you know in your mind and in your heart that it's the right thing to do. As far as I can tell, that is what this crazy condition of being both a human being and a lawyer is all about. And I guess I really am an old lady when I say this now. We are all counting on you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. On behalf of our students and everyone here, thank you for your words and thank you for being here today. I now have the pleasure of conferring an honorary degree on today's commencement speaker. So Robbie, if you could come forward one more time. I'm gonna keep talking just a little bit. As the oldest independent law school in the nation, Albany Law School has had the distinction and good fortune to convey honorary degrees on some of the nation's leading jurists, attorneys, statespeople, and public policy leaders, including Secretaries of State John Foster Dulles and Henry Kissinger, members of the United States Congress, the Honorable Judith Kaye, and even Alexander Hamilton. You will now join their ranks. Roberta Kaplan has made a career as a champion for the rights of others. She's fought in the highest court in the land for equity and fairness. She's a successful lawyer, author, mentor, and teacher. But more than that, she's a fighter. She's not afraid to take on the most powerful people and institutions in the country to ensure that justice is done. Her willingness to challenge the status quo and use the power of the law to make a positive change has had a profound impact on millions of people. Robbie's commitment to justice is not limited to the courtroom. She's also a tireless advocate for civil rights and social justice. Robbie, you are a true inspiration to our students. You're a brilliant lawyer, a fierce advocate, a dedicated public servant, and a perfect example of what can be accomplished when you do not compromise your values, but instead make them the core and focus of your legal career. You're a force for good in the world, and for this reason, we are proud to honor you with this degree. By the virtue of the authority vested by the Regents of the University of the State of New York and the trustees of Albany Law School, and by them and me, I confer upon you, Roberta Kaplan, the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa with all the rights and privileges appurtenant thereto.